Hi everyone. This week I'm gonna talk about speaking and writing. So about writing, the book says the Web 2.0 application is quite useful, like social media, blogs, Googles, etc. Like basically, online tools. And also, the our book mentions the Turnitin criterion writing Paul or W Paul and Grammarly for like auto grading system. I actually use Grammarly so often. It's pretty useful to check my grammar. So since my mother tongue is not English, I often make mistakes toward the grammar, so I use Grammarly. And Turnitin is like another tool which I think most of the professors at USF use for submitting our report and like check the plagiarism. So yeah, there are like several tools for check the grammar and check the plagiarism like automatically. And another like tool is like Corpus. Um to be honest, in Japan we do not really use the Corpus based tools like in the foreign language, basically English classes. It's like basically we learn grammar and like read some sentences, but it's not like not really corpus. Like it's basically have some short short reading, so not that long or not really academic. But corpus based lead tools is like pretty useful to know how the vocabulary or the phrases are actually used. And we also can learn the expressions, like unique expressions and used in that writings. Also, using the corpus means basically we need to read that writing, read that stuff, reports or whatever. So it's also good practice of reading. You know, reading it, and we can learn like also the writing, what do you call writing skills or writing tips, I believe. Yeah. So corpus is like let us improve our writing skills, but also reading is also another skill we can improve through corpus tools. And the social networking sites or social media or SNS, it's a good tool to know like the language actually used. I think I've already discussed about this like in the first week's RDS, I believe. So in the social media, we usually use the basically informal languages. Like it's not really formal, so it's called descriptive grammar. Like it's not based on the rules, but more like it's based on how it's used. So like we can find like some slangs or abbreviations through SNS. This is the example of the tweet from my this is my Twitter, and yeah, like this 2W indicating like the laughter in Japanese online context, and also this one is like kind of it's pretty difficult. Like it's a slang we use in Japanese online context. So through the social media, we would learn the descriptive grammar. We would, descriptive learning, like these W or this parenthesis. Another one like of writing is like collaborative writing. Actually, like from my experiences, Google Docs and Google Slides are, I think, the best tools for writing collaboratively. So like, as I showed, as I wrote here, users or writers can see the like who changed it or where changed it, like at the same time of like other person changed. Or we also can like comment on the writing itself. So like if you don't want to directly like change that sentence or phrase like without saying anything, you can just highlight there and add a comment like saying there's another way to like state that phrase or whatever. You can just commenting it, but not, you don't have to change it, edit it, but you can add the comment on the writing itself. So I think Google Docs and Slides are pretty good tools for collaborative writing. And the speaking, I indicate here, immerse the actual spoken circumstances. That to me it's the best way. Like study abroad, like being in that country, being in that place, spoke that target language spoken place is for me, I think it's the best way to learn your speaking. Yeah, I mean, improve your speaking skills. As I'm writing here, the study abroad or being in that circumstances allows us to notice the language, like you can hear what you learned and you can see, read, or also speak it. Like you actually experience that language if you if you experience, like if you do the study abroad. So I think it's the best way to learn language or learn mostly speaking. Or another ways, like at least you need some interactive work, like output of what you learned. Like only input the knowledge is not enough. So like necessity of drill, I think it's good. It's good tool, but if you do some drills, you also need to use that grammar, like through speaking or writing, whatever. Like need output, I think. And in terms of pronunciation or like the grammar accuracy, I don't think it's very important in like speaking context. I mean, if the pronunciation is like different, very different, indeed you need to correct your pronunciation. But like in this world, not only English but also other languages, every language has like somewhat the dialects, like different pronunciation. So there's no like correct, like definitely correct pronunciation. So like you should have like kind of somewhat similar or understandable pronunciations, but you don't have to pronounce very correctly, because others, like people understand you, like about grammar accuracy too. If it's not terrible, it's fine, I think. And then like learning culture and pragmatics. Culture is very important factor for languages or laxes. For example, there's no exact translation of English bad words, F words or whatever. Like, because English and Japanese language has like different background. Like, its development is like pretty different. And like, we have different cultures. So, although we would understand, Japanese people understand like those words are bad, inappropriate. We don't really understand why it's not appropriate unless we experience that culture. Vice versa, Japanese words mendokusai or darui are very difficult to translate in English. I think it can be translated as I don't want to be bothered for doing assignment or something. Like, it means like I don't want to spend much time toward doing something. But it's not exactly the same. Also, what I noticed before is like this word survey. I think there's no direct translation of the word survey. There are some alternative or kind of similar meaning, but it's slightly different. So, culture is very important, like, or the background of development of that language is pretty important to know that language, your target language. So I say study abroad is pretty good way to learn another language because you can experience that culture too. Yeah, experiencing that culture is important. So like through telecommunication or SNS or you can Google the culture too. But like in some way you need to uh experience the culture. Study abroad is actually the best way for me. I think study abroad is the best way, but we have internet system, so we can communicate with foreigners through internet, or we can find some social media post, or we can Google it, whatever. Like experiencing the language culture. No, sorry, experiencing the culture is pretty essential to know the language, to master the language.